Dude, Wylie McGraw, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you for having me, brother.
So I want to start with this game because you are a performance accelerator. And, you know, some people that are listening right now might say, well, what is a performance accelerator? And I will say it seems like you've taken some really cool and interesting experiences
Yeah.
and you've kind of distilled the principles down to like, this is what it takes to reach peak performance. So I want to get into some of those experiences. Have you ever heard of the game F Marry Kill?
Ooh.
That's the generic. It's like, who would you sleep with? Who would you marry? Who would you kill?
Okay, I've heard of that. Yeah.
We'll use date. We'll use date for the
Okay,
podcast,
okay.
right? But so for anyone listening, the game goes like this. It's like, who would you date, marry, or kill? And Wylie and I are both probably about the same age, kind of right around that 40-year-old range. And it would work like this. Like I would give you three names: Jennifer Aniston, Oprah Winfrey, Mother Teresa, right? Like, and you would tell me who you date, marry, kill would be. Well, I want to tweak it a little bit. So we're not going to use women. Based on the three big experiences that you've had in your life,
Sure.
baseball at a high level,
Yes.
bull riding,
Yep.
elite military experience, of those three experiences, in terms of like growing personally, professionally, and finding these pillars, which would you date, marry, and kill? Which would you do as a hobby? Which
United
would you
States
do as a
military.
career?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I thought you were
And then,
asking that question. Okay.
so which would you do as a hobby, a
Gotcha.
career, and what would you never have done?
I
And you
see what
have
you're
to do it that way. Yeah.
You know what? I appreciate that. To give people context that are listening, your audience is always wants to understand the nature of the answers I'm going to provide, which is which one would I do as a hobby, a career, and which one would I never do again? First and foremost, I probably would never go back to baseball again, even though I love the sport. That experience was very, I would say, in its own way, limited. It was hyper
Okay.
focused on a very specific skill set, and it did not give me an environment to feel totally optimized and feel like I was playing the game for the love of the game first and foremost. Even though I did, there was these external pressures to be perfect that really did not allow me to experience a version of myself that I knew had been waiting to be awakened. So I would say that's the one I would never do again, first and foremost.
Okay.
A hobby, I would do bull riding. So, but bull riding was the transitional experience from baseball that really started to give me access to more of the man I wanted to be. It started to create a holistic connection to my mind, my body, my intuition, and the emotions that I had all at once in a very holistic, challenging environment that was full of unknowns and variables that we could not control. All we could control was our ability to stay connected, centered, and focused in the present moment to experience our capabilities to ride the best that we could, despite what bull we drew, whatever rodeo we were in. So that would be a hobby. Now,
Okay.
I'm a skydiver now, so I'm definitely doing extreme sports still to this day, and I do that as a hobby, and I love it. Full of unknowns and variables. Trust your skill, trust your gear, trust your focus and your capabilities while you're in the midst of the most extreme situations, right? So the career, it would be military. I talk about it constantly that I miss it because it was the most freeing experience that I have ever had. In the midst of combat, in the midst of the most chaotic environments, I found myself being able to stay eerily calm and being able to stay focused.
Okay.
And I started to see the contrast that what I experienced growing up was really where the war was taking place. And when I was at actual war, that's when I was feeling the most alive and the most optimized version of myself in that moment, in that time frame. So baseball, never again. Bull riding, hobby. Military would be the career. And that's why I've taken these experiences and understood that the only way you achieve self-mastery, which then results in your state of being, which is peak performance, it's not an attainable thing to get done. It's actually a state of being, is to be put in the most radical environments that challenge you, stretch you, and shake you up from within so that you can actually yield to the fear instead of trying to either control it or overcome it. Yielding to that fear gave me more power. It gave me access to more of my potential, and it created more success for me in those environments versus trying to overcome it or try to suppress it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So where specifically, you were in the Army, right?
I was 101st
Yeah.
Airborne Division. Yeah.
Okay. So did you serve in Iraq or Afghanistan?
Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq, all three.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear in that. It's funny because you look back at some of these experiences that people have had, and it's very common to get this performance translation from sport to business to performance in a lot of ways. You hear it all
Sure.
the time. You hear parents or you hear people talk about their experience and say, "Oh, I learned teamwork and I learned hard work and
Absolutely.
discipline from sport or from military," and it's this translatable experience. And I've had some conversations with people that haven't played sports,
Sure.
and inevitably they always go back and they can pull from other
Of
experiences
course.
too and say, I learned discipline this way, I
Right.
learned
Right.
teamwork this way. And I don't think it's necessarily essential. Well, I played sport, and I do attribute a lot of my successful tendencies to it. I think there's a lot of translatable ideas that are helpful in terms of being successful and achieving your peak performance throughout life. So, what specifically about the military, let's talk about, do you feel you learned that translated so well into helping leaders
Mhm.
achieve peak performance?
Well, first and foremost, I'm happy that you said it the way that you said it, because you're right. Life experiences themselves are going to differ from each person. Not everybody's going to be in the military. Not everybody's going to be a bull rider or an athlete. However, if you can experience what you experience and take away from those experiences, those applicable assets to your ability to grow and
Yeah.
achieve and become better in your life and succeed in the things you put your focus to, kudos to you. When I talk about the real world experiences that rattle you from within, that are challenging and scary, those experiences of mine are what molded me into the man that I am today, because they ignited, I would say, an understanding of a gift, a skill that I had that was buried underneath the perfectionism as a young man playing
Mm,
baseball. And when that became apparent to me, especially from bull riding into the military, I was able to then cultivate that gift and skill through my desire to be optimal in my life, be able to face my demons, battle through my stresses, be held accountable in every aspect of what is hindering my power and my potential, and get to a place where I'm able to manage inner volatility. I can handle any situation that I find myself in. I don't live a life of stress. I don't have things that throw me off course no matter what is going on around me. And I have health as my top priority. My relationships are thriving. I have a great business. I'm able to stay in a state of gratitude and peace constantly, no matter what. That is self mastery. So I take the
mm,
military, as you asked. The leadership lessons that I learned in combat, you cannot cultivate in a boardroom or a classroom.
right.
These are real world experiences that you might have a quote plan for. However, there's constant shifts and changes despite what you might be planning for specifically. And I know people that might be listening that are military will understand that. In war and in combat, despite what is thought to be laid out for you, you have to always be vigilant. We call it staying frosty. You have to be focused on those variables that can change at a moment's notice. We might be going into a combat operation where our intelligence says we are facing maybe a few hundred enemy fighter, and we get there, there's 2,000 of them. So you don't understand that this is all we're going to be staunch at, is focusing on this one plan. You have to be willing to be flexible and to flow with the chaos that might ensue despite what you can prepare for. And that to me is where I started to apply in my life when I got out of the military, is despite what is going on, be constantly like water, as Bruce Lee says, flow with the chaos, and being able to access more of yourself comes from that state of being versus you trying to be rigid and try to battle up against it, thinking that just because you have planned for it, it's going to go the way you need it to go. And if it doesn't, somehow it's going to be wrong or you're a failure.
Yeah,
So,
do you think it's because of the dire repercussions of not being prepared in the military? It's when you're faced with battle and you're faced with death and you're
yep.
faced with gunfire, like there's just a different urgency than if you're in the boardroom and look, you might lose $100 million sale. And let's be honest, these Fortune 500 CEOs and directors that you're working with
Yes.
personally
Yes.
as a performance accelerator, the consequences are dire, and
They are.
the repercussions of those consequences could potentially mean the livelihood of many people, not
Right.
their lives, right?
Right.
Like not life and death, but in a
The
way,
livelihood.
the
Right.
livelihood of their career. So do you
Right.
think it's just that like because it is life and death, the military, like if you don't have that contingency tertiary plan, or this hyper focus or awareness on every minute detail.
Say that again. If I can you
So I
give
guess
me
I'm trying to wonder if it's just the life and the death kind of dichotomy that really makes it so that the military you learn these lessons
well,
or much
yeah.
better than in a boardroom.
I'm glad. Yeah, that's you know what ends up happening, and I'm sure there's many guys and gals out there that will relate to this. Is we didn't get caught up in the life or death aspect of combat. We
Mm,
understood that, so we it was in the back of our mind. Remember, when you join the military, you might have an idea that I'm going to boot camp, I'm going to my specialized training or school. There's a way they've laid out what I call a framework. So there's no cookie cutter system that's available. They might have a framework for you that everybody kind of goes through, right? They go through Army Ranger School, SEAL
yeah.
training, buds. You do, combat infantry school, you go to the mortar training, et cetera. Everything has a specific framework. However, how you perform in that framework is going to differ from the guy next to you. It's
Yeah.
all about challenging you and stretching you beyond your limits emotionally, mentally, and even physically, so you can become the most elite version of yourself. So that when you're in the middle of a war zone, what you're focusing on is innate. It just naturally happens
Mm,
when things start to hit the fan. So you end up performing better because you're so prepared through your training and your ability to surrender and yield into the fear of whatever unknown is becoming a soldier or a SEAL or a ranger or special forces, whatever it might be, that when in combat, you're able to flex and flow with whatever's showing up because of your ability to stay focused in the training and the experiences of being completely challenged that way. That's why SEALs specifically, right? Um,
yeah.
they go through the most arduous, most transformative training in the world. There is nobody harder than that. I will give them that. Absolutely. That's why my work is considered the proverbial Navy SEAL training equivalent to high performance and leadership development, because I put my clients through the most extreme challenges in real time with them, as like you said, that Fortune 500 CEO is experiencing the ups and downs with those deals that could potentially cause the livelihood of other people. They need to be a completely challenged to eradicate why they're experiencing that up and down to begin with. Same thing with the Navy SEALs. They become the best, most elite version of themselves, but not everybody can be a SEAL. So it's going to take someone who really wants to stay at the top of their game, not just experience it and then fall backwards, that will be willing to go through this type of work. And to finalize that question for you, brother, it's when you can disconnect from the systematic approach to your performance and thinking about things like life or death, or, if I don't follow this strategy, it's not going to work. You actually can, in fact, find better solutions for those chaotic moments that lead you out of it, despite what it may look like. Does that
I
help?
wonder why that is. Yeah, that's interesting, and I know that I
Excuse me.
really kind of look at and admire guys like Jocko Willink, who talk about their SEAL experience, and guys like yourself who have gone through this military kind of leadership training. And one of the things that Jocko talks about is his ability to detach, right, and the
Right.
importance of detaching. And he gives great examples of being in a gunfight and just literally kind of shouldering his gun and taking a step, literal a physical step back, and saying the perspective you receive from that physical action is profound.
Right.
So how can leaders who are kind of lost in this forest and trees, right? Like they can't see the trees through the forest or the forest through the trees. How can they detach? How can they take a step back and say, let's gain some perspective, let's gain some awareness, and let's make a more strategic
Hmm.
decision and approach?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Jocko. I met Jocko years ago at a specific event with Dave Asprey from Bulletproof Coffee, and
Yeah.
Jocko's he's a great guy. And despite I would say the persona that everybody sees from the outside, because most people hear SEAL, they see his stature, they see his face, and they think completely that alpha disconnected guy, But in reality, he is coming from a place of understanding his own emotions, knowing when to apply his emotions. He was a lieutenant commander
Mhm.
with the most decorated SEAL team in Iraq. So there's that respect level for him. And what he's talking about is being able to be calm and to process your emotions and respect and understand them in those moments that don't interfere with your focus and your ability to complete the task. That detachment doesn't mean you become a heartless psychopath in the middle of chaos. What it really means is, can you take a step back physically, mentally, emotionally, and allow the right response to present
Mm.
itself, because your ability to set the ego aside, be willing to look at even your own shortcomings, realize that what is it that I'm experiencing right now that might be throwing my mental focus off. That's what Jocko's talking about. It's what I talk about, is can you take that step back and allow yourself that grounded moment to then present the solution, so then you can reapproach that dynamic, but in a very smooth and efficient way, which is why we use that terminology, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. When you can slow down just enough that you can take that breath slower, you can squeeze that trigger a little bit cleaner, you'll get a better shot off and you'll hit your target. So when you comes to your performance, comes to your work, can you take that step back and you slow down just enough to be aware of the stress or chaos that might be presented in those bigger type decisions, and you'll find the answers will present themselves versus you trying to figure it out and try to push through it. Because when we become rigid, that personality flaw of rigidity creates burnout, and it causes more problems than it does good. And that's why you have CEOs that'll lose $100 million, which I've experienced with clients before I've come into their life. It's because they have never taken a step back to go, what is holding me back and hindering my performance? What have I not looked at in my life that I've overlooked, swept under the rug, disregarded, or chalked up to just being a part of business? Those things, in fact, are hurting your performance. And when you can step back, like he says, like I've talked about, and really assess that in a brief moment, you'll find the answers will be more abundant for you, and your performance as a leader will actually accelerate quicker for you, and resulting in the things that you want to have happen.
I love this. I love this. And I've struggled in articulating this in a lot of ways, because I feel like building a strong foundation is arguably the key to success in anything, right? And it sounds like that's kind of where you're going with this training. You're saying, the reason the military is such a good kind of leadership jumping off platform is because what they put you through in the training,
Yes.
no other company is dedicated to training like that. It's just the scenarios, the stress, every little detail of it. But it's what it's doing is it's building a foundation. And when you have a strong foundation, then you have like that freedom to work within the foundation that's already built. So,
Right.
like when you're working with a leader, and this is what I like to talk to a lot of business leaders about, is what have you done? What is your foundation? Are you healthy? Are you physically healthy? Are you mentally healthy? Because the
Right.
decisions you make, the actions you take, your ability to have a meaningful, powerful presentation is determined on that physical and mental health in a lot of ways, right? So do you
Absolutely.
take a step back and say like, hey guys, like, I mean, not what's your 40 time, but how is your physical fitness, right? Like,
Right.
are you working out in the morning? What's
Right.
going on?
Well, if in the nature of my work, that we have military leaders. Let me take a step back real quick. We military leaders that are doing good things for companies and cultures and companies. They bring in that leadership and that understanding. Like we'll go back to Jocko, does it as well for his consulting firm, and it works for certain people. But I always say we can never turn I would say a civilian business leader into a military combatant. So trying to make them into a combat style leader kind
Yeah.
of defeats the purpose of
Mhm.
why we learn the skills we learn. We can provide them strategy, we can provide them insight that creates, I would say, a more structural external solution for their organization. However, the former CEO of Girl Scouts talks about it, and I'm just paraphrasing this quickly. It's we're taught constantly our entire life how to do, how to do, but it's the
Mhm.
quality and the character of the leader that actually determines the performance and the results. Period. So I approach the leadership, I approach the work that I do from a holistic standpoint. It's understanding, and if I don't know if you are you good with me cussing on your show, because I want to make sure
Sure. Absolutely.
that. So
Yep.
this is a term I use called getting unfucked.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, I had someone actually ask me that the other day. When you work with your clients, what do you mean by that? Does that mean everybody's just fucked up? And I said, well, not necessarily to the degree that your mind might be thinking that. However, most people, especially those at the top, have built their empires, have built their success on the back
Mhm.
of overriding health issues. sweeping stress under the rug, thinking that their life experiences have no impact on their performance or their focus, disregarding relationship dynamics, all for the sake of making money and some notoriety. And that's when I come into someone's life, when I'm introduced to a client, a leader, a public figure, a celebrity, whoever I work with, despite the industry, it's because they are done sacrificing and overriding those things, because those things are, in fact, limiting potential despite how much money or how much notoriety you've created. I've worked with people
Mm.
that have $300 million net worths, but their wives are miserable. They don't have a great relationship with their kids. Their health is deteriorating and they're burned out. And what they do is they override that. They chase relief and they consistently stay in the cycle of chaos and they never know how to get out of it. They need to be unfucked. They need to be put into positions that erupt and eradicate those things. And my specialty in what I do is come to the table and I make them see and look at things that they otherwise would look at. And I have a whole network of people that supports me in tandem, so that 24/7 in the work that I do with them in real time, I'm constantly challenging them in the way I talk to them, in the way I present things to them, in the things I make them do, that gets every aspect of their life to a place of optimization, because they have faced those demons. They have battled through those stresses with me by their side in their trenches or in their foxhole like a soldier, so that they can get to the top of their game and they can succeed even further than they have. They can innovate even better and their culture can shift, because the leader is what impacts every aspect of their dynamic, every aspect of the work they do. And if you don't get the leader optimized, you'll never have a fully functioning team, and your company or your life will suffer because of it.
Yeah, success starts with leadership for sure.
Period.
How much do you feel like there's an importance on having a purpose or a mission? Because what I'm hearing you say with this being unfucked and having just these relationships fall apart
Right.
and this sense of stress in their personal life. I mean, one of the things I've always thought about is to be truly successful in life and not even business, right? To be truly successful in life, you have to align your career with your mission, your purpose, your reason for being, right?
Sure.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be something. I mean, it has to be altruistic and it has to be, good. But it's like really take a step back and think what you want. Like, what is it you want? Do you want? Are you
Mm.
driven
Ooh,
by
I love it.
money? Right? Like, do you want a $1 billion yacht? And if that's the case, well, then every aspect of your life should be aligned with finding this $1 billion yacht life, right? But if it's I want to support my family, I want to have a happy wife and beautiful children, and I want them to love me and learn from me, and I want to foster kindness and love in the world.
Sure.
Well, you can still have a $1 billion company, but make sure it aligns with those other goals because they can't be siloed, I don't believe. So
I like that
do
you
you
said,
talk about purpose?
well, purpose, you would be surprised what I have found in my experience working with these high powered people, um, is most of them get to a point where they have chased, I call it the antiquated metric of success.
Mm,
Make a ton of money, become somebody, look at be looked at as successful because I've been able to look what I've created, like you said. And I love that you brought up, do I want $1 billion yacht? Well, here's the thing: money, notoriety, material possessions are all byproducts of alignment. That's why a narcissist can be a leader and just make tons of money and just be a complete jerk. And people, everything around them is in
mm,
complete chaos as they climb their ladder of success. But why are they so successful financially? It's because they're so aligned with it. Okay. That's your alignment from your purpose. If you want to chase that, you're going to always feel limited in your life. And there are people at the top that are very ego driven and they're very narcissistic and they have that desire to stay at the top with their money and their power. And unfortunately, that's why our society is not as optimal as it could be, because we have leaders that literally live their life that way. They really don't care about their relationships. They don't really care about anything else other than power and money and notoriety and staying at the top. But if you're the type of leader out there or high achiever or an entrepreneur or executive, you're listening to this, and I want your audience to really hear it. And you're that type of person, like you said, my passion and my mission is to actually create shifts in the world around me, to help people grow, to be the best version of myself, so that even though I might run a $1 billion company, people are inspired by who I am. Then you actually need to set aside the idea that success means chasing money first and go into that optimized state of who you are and how you live your life, because how well you live your life will impact your business. They are not mutually exclusive, despite how much we're taught in society that personal is separate from business. That's BS, period. Who you are affects your ability to perform in your business. They are mutually together. So you have to realize, if my life is suffering, my performance will be limited. And until I get my life optimal, I will never really know who I am at the core, and never know what I'm truly capable of accomplishing and how much I can actually move the world around me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You talked about I can't find it where blind spots. That's where it
Yes.
was. Uncovering blind spots. And
Yes.
that's kind of where that what you just said took me is there may be a blind spot, whether it be in the alignment of your company, whether it may be in the alignment of your personal life. But it sounds like one of the biggest things that everybody struggles with, specifically high performing leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, is they don't have someone in their life, or they don't have a network of people that help them be self-aware enough to uncover blind spots, right? And maybe
Correct.
it's ego, but it's also
Uh,
probably just that when you're a high performer, sometimes you look at other people as though they don't have the same perspective that you might have. Otherwise, they
sure.
would be where you are, right? So, how should people really go about uncovering blind spots in their life?
Uh-huh. That's a good one. I will touch on what you just said. We have another defining aspect of people's status. We call them high performing leaders because, again, they run these big companies. They are industry shakers. They've got
Mhm,
these, we call, people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, all them high performers. However, I challenge that notion, because your ability to get things done, to complete tasks, to make money, to accomplish goals is achievement. It's achievement. You're able
mhm,
to be a quote high, super high achiever. Let's look at your life. Do I want to emulate who you are? Or am I just chasing the idea that you've created some, I would say, material success, and I want that?
mm,
So, blind spots, we're all full of them. I have a resource, my partner by my side, who's constantly keeping me at the top of my game, who's always showcasing little aspects as I move and do my work, because I'm working with these high caliber people. I'm constantly in their energy with them. I'm in their stresses and their chaos with them, getting them to the top of their game and in a very accelerated manner. So I'm always being optimized myself to stay at the top of my game. This is what leaders, you're right. I'm glad that you said that, right? Is because they don't have a very specific resource in their life by their side, in their pocket, so to speak, constantly redirecting their focus in
mm,
real time, that keeps them heightened in that challenge, that exposes those blind spots. We have your typical coaches, your typical consultants. We have these household names that constantly repackage and repurpose their same philosophies year in and year out as the next best strategy for what you want for your life and business next. And people are buying into that, and they never actually get to where they want to go to the degree they want. So they need an outside force that's capable to be in the trenches with them, that can see things in real time, that go, nope, what you just said, what you're doing right now is the reason why that didn't work out. Those are those little blind spots that need to be uncovered. So if your audience wants to know what their blind spots are, they've got to have somebody that's outside of them that can see what's really plaguing them and holding them back, instead of just trying to figure it out on their own. You need to find someone that can challenge you in real time, that redirects you despite what you might hear. You might not like what they're telling you, but I'm telling you, if you can accept that information, your blind spots can in fact be exposed, despite how big or small they might be.
yeah. How did that work in the military?
How did that work in the military? Well, that's what the extreme training is all about. They push you and break you so that you're the most vulnerable. The only way your blind spots are going to be fully revealed is when you're at your most vulnerable. The problem we have in our society, it's personal development especially, which is why it's a $300+ billion industry, is because they're selling you and banking on the idea that you're going to want to learn and copy from them, instead of understanding
Mhm,
your power and potential on your own. And what ends up happening is nobody is being as vulnerable as they might be marketing. Marketing has gone rogue. This idea of transformation, high performance, peak performance they're all catchphrases now to sell people into something. They're not,
yeah.
they're just bastardized. And unfortunately, people think that they're transforming. They think that they're being exposed to who they really are, but they really don't know who they are because they're not being as vulnerable and as willing to be as open to that as possible. And when you're most vulnerable is when you get the most out of you. People want to know how. We're stuck in the how. How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that? Because what we are doing is we are fearing the unknown of that resource that's coming to the table, and we want to control a little bit of it so we can feel comfortable to step into it. And I'm here to tell people you're not going to be peak performers by approaching personal development and growth from that standpoint. Period. End of story.
Yeah, vulnerability is so interesting, and I
Ugh.
love that you brought that up because one of the things you said there was people when they're most vulnerable, that's when they expose or uncover their blind spots.
Right.
So, one of the things you talk about as well is embracing the suck. And I truly believe this. I think if you stay in your comfort zone, you will never experience vulnerability. You will never experience the growth potential you could have for anything. And there's
Right.
so many different ways this can be applied. I've heard Tim Ferriss gives a great example of this, and he said, "Look, if you want to get yourself out of your comfort zone, the best way to do it is every single time you go into Starbucks for a coffee, ask for a 10% discount. It's super uncomfortable, and you'll be shocked because you'll save money over time. Because more times than not, you'll actually get a 10% discount. But that discomfort of asking pushes you to have uncomfortable conversations. It
Sure.
pushes you to step out of your comfort zone. Same
Exposes truth.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with working out, right? I mean, you
Sure.
played baseball, you're a bull rider. You don't grow, your muscles don't grow from doing easy workouts.
Not at
Like
all.
you have to push yourself to a certain limit to experience growth. So, how should we be looking in the business world of getting vulnerable? Like, what could we be doing as employees, as leaders? How do we get uncomfortable?
Well, I'm glad that you said that because going back to the Starbucks thing that Tim Ferriss talked about, I'll give you an extreme example of having someone ask something. I worked with this public figure in the personal development space, 30 plus years his experience, well known, worked with some of the biggest names in the world. We were introduced because his friend, who's a PR person, said he's burned out, he's at his wit's end. I know what you do. Would you be willing to connect with him? I said, absolutely. I care about doing my work first and foremost. So if I have someone that wants to do it, who's willing to go wherever I take them and was willing to surrender to that, I'm more than willing to jump in and do the work with them. So we met and we spent time together, getting to know each other, and letting him know I'm here to actually do something that matters for you to really transform you out of this chaos that you are living in, despite all the success you've created. And what we uncovered quickly, the reason why he was feeling burnout at his wit's end, despite making 50 million online and having multiple 8-figure businesses, is because he never resolved his terror around money and finances. Grew up poor,
Mm,
and he carried that energy with him his entire life. Despite all the work he had done on himself, nobody ever knew that was something he needed to battle. We have people who are afraid to go into those depths with people. We're like, well, that's what therapy is for. I can't do that. We have coaches that say that's not my job. Well, unfortunately, that's why people only get so far, is because you're unwilling to be in that muck with someone, and maybe you're not built for it, and that's okay. So for people that want to become the most vulnerable, what I was able to do with him, and one of the experiences we had was right before an event, he said, look, I'm bleeding here and I need money to hold me over so that I can go to my event, make some more money, and I can get ahead of the game. And the only reason why he was feeling that is because he could never just keep what he would make. It would just constantly go out and he would feel just under that pressure. And it was become
mm,
this vicious cycle, as I call, of chronic stress from his past that he never worked through. So what I made him do in real time was pick up his phone and call all of his celebrity friends, all of his billionaire friends, all of his public figure friends. I said, here's the deal. You're going to call them and you're going to ask them for X amount of dollars. And it was a substantial amount of money. I said, if that's the number you need to hold you over, we're not going to continue to work on this thing that you're building right now together until you do that. He panicked. And that panic showcased that blind spot. And I said, that's right there. The fact that you're panicking instead of responding to me differently tells me this is exactly where we need to go to get rid of that demon that's sitting inside you around your finances. And he said, I will not do it. You don't do this in the industry. You don't ask your friends for this kind of money. I said, well, I don't give a shit. At the end of the day, if you don't do it, we're never going to get anywhere. So I'm going to go get us food. And when I come back, you better have called all your friends on your contact list. And he fought tooth and nail for 5-10 minutes. And I just gave him the ultimatum and said, brother, I'm here to save your ass. I'm here to take you to the next level. If you don't want to do it, then I'll leave and I'll never come back. And he goes, no, don't come back. Don't do that. I said, just pick up the phone and do the exercise. It's a challenge. I need to stretch you. This is on purpose, my man. He goes, I left. He called everybody. When I came back, he was a completely different person. Just facing that terror, calling people and saying, hey, I'm hurting right now. Will you help me? Expose his vulnerability to his friends, despite his reputation, which is different from his character. His reputation was being the successful guy on the outside, but in reality, he just exposed to them, I have not been as successful as you think. I feel embarrassed. I feel stupid. But he faced that and he was willing to do that. And I held him to that, held his feet to the fire. And he ended up going to his event 2 days later and basically 4xing his average income from his 3-day events. He made $1.2 million. And he ended up having clients go, I want to spend more money with you. I want to spend more time with you. And he started to actually accumulate more income quicker because he faced that terror. So that's like Tim Ferriss's thing on a more extreme level. But you've got to be willing to be pushed to your limits and then beyond them. And you have to have the right people in your life that you cannot control, that are meant to challenge you and meant to push you. So if you're hiring resources, coaches, buying into programs, you need to stop and consider, is this the right thing for me? Is this going to really stretch me beyond my own comfort? Or am I just going to perceive myself being pushed beyond my comforts because I like the way it feels and I'm never going to get where I really want to go? Does that now land and make sense for that question you asked? Because it's important for your audience to understand that you need resources you cannot control that can make you very uncomfortable and challenge you.
Yeah, it's the reason why people should hire a trainer and not buy a workout program in a lot of ways, right? Like there's a cost investment, but if your goal is to get to 8 or 10% body fat, or if your goal is to, bench press 500 pounds, like, you can buy a program. There's programs out there that do it. And look, it's not like the programs aren't good or the content isn't good. It's just that the individual one-on-one accountability, constant tweaking of the program, right? And even if it's not a program, it's like you said, it's uncovering blind spots. It's the self-awareness. It's someone that can detach from you. Because if you're just buying a program, whether it be a workout program or a self-optimization program, it takes the work to go through the program, but it's still your perspective.
Sure.
Right. So
absolutely.
So you make a good point, right? You do need resources, but how do you find resources, right? Like, say you don't exist.
Okay.
Say your company doesn't exist. How does someone go out and find resources to grow personally?
Well, why don't you take that philosophy, that principle that you talked about with Tim Ferriss, and get people that don't have, let's say, access to someone like me. Maybe they're not in a position to work with me. They're not at the right time. They need to find their own. They're like listening, going, "Hey, I like Wylie, what he's saying. I want to be challenged that way, like the military. I want to be stretched. I want to be very uncomfortable. I want to be scared, so that I can rattle all the stresses that I carry inside me out, so I can know who I am without that and see my potential thrive." Well, like you said, find a trainer, find a coach. Put yourself in those environments that do in fact scare you. So if you're going, I want to hire myself a business coach, and you find someone who's looks successful online, you said, oh, this person's got a huge following, they got a name, I want to hire them. But you don't feel scared when you're doing that, stop. Go towards, you're like, well, I'm not worthy of hiring so and so. Why not? Why don't you pick up the phone and call? Find out. Why don't you explore? Despite how much money you have, despite where you're at in your business or your life, why don't you call me and say, I'm just going to have a conversation with this guy. Let me explore, because I might be surprised that what I discover in the conversation, in fact, moves me in the right direction so that the right resources present themselves to me. Why are we always stuck in the idea that you have to go out and try to grind and find it yourself versus understanding we're powerful beings that can manifest resources at a whim. If we're willing to be fully surrendering into the vulnerability of, like you said, go ask for that 10% off. Well, call that coach who might be high level and still say, hey, I'd love to have a conversation about your philosophy and challenge and experience what that could do for me. Are you willing to have that conversation? You might be surprised. And for me, I don't do sales funnels. I don't do, complimentary, consultations. I am open to conversation. So if people call, they call. If you want to have a real world conversation and you're inspired, let's do it. Be willing to be bold and step into those unknowns that actually scare you. Don't try to tiptoe into it. Dip your toe in the cold water and go, okay, I did it. I got a little cold. Jump in that cold. Let yourself be in it for a moment, and you might be surprised what presents itself to you as a resource for you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm sitting here thinking about this, and I'm trying to go back to like marketing in a way, right?
Yes.
And a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, business starters, whatever it may be, it's really easy to go online and say like, how do I market this product, this
Sure.
um,
Sure.
service that I have? It's a big thing right now with Amazon, right? People are selling products on Amazon, and it's all about just buying ad space and sending eyeballs into your product. Well, it's more meaningful and it's more engaging, and you're going to build a better reputation with the people that purchase your product if you're the one out there exposing yourself, being vulnerable, having conversations, building relationships
Sure.
with the potential clients, right? And it's
Right.
harder. It's a lot harder. You can hide your insecurities with money, right?
Absolutely.
Because you can pay for advertising that hides your face, takes a picture, takes a nice video, and puts it up. But if you're not out there talking, conversing, having a conversation with people, then yeah, it's a lot more meaningful, but it's a lot scarier. But the return is so much greater.
Exactly. And I'm going to add to this real quick, Ryan. It's getting out of the mindset that we need to just scale just for scale's sake.
Mm,
We're sold by these household names. I've worked with some people who work with the guru of all gurus in personal development, et cetera. And they're like, look, I spent $1 million. I don't really feel like I got as much as I thought I was going to get. Great, cool. I got the notoriety. I got to do these things. But people are stuck in I call it the learn and copy method. And I say it's good to learn from these people,
mhm,
but trying to copy what they've done is the reason why you end up getting stuck where you're at. So we grind and strive so hard to like scale our businesses. And everybody says, why do what you're making for a month now, or a year, make it a month now. It's like, why? What's the purpose of scaling and growing these massive markets? What is truly your outcome for that? Is it just accumulation? And most people, especially those at the top, have built that idea on compensation. They have been building on the idea I need to accumulate to suppress the way that I truly feel when I'm by myself. I don't like who I really am, but they will never
mhm.
honestly admit that. And they will put up the facade of the happy videos of how they're the high performance coach in the world and like, look at all my stuff. And they'll sell these programs to people at $20,000, $30,000, $50,000. And everybody's like, wow, I want to be like this guy. Look at the success. And we have millions of people get stuck in this grind of copying everybody else, and they never really get anywhere. They never end up being the same level of those people that they buy into. And that's the problem is like, first and foremost, why do you need to make more products? Why do we need to sell more products? Our world is already toxic enough as it is. Why do we have this like incessant need to accumulate and scale instead of actually removal and getting to a very powerful, truncated version of yourself so that maybe you work with less people at a higher ticket or higher investment, or, and more impact can come from that because you're willing to do that way. But we get lost in, I want to be big. I want to have more, more, more. And at the end of the day, that's why my work is only with 3 to 4 leaders per year. It's very intimate. It's very one-on-one. I'm not here. I cannot scale, and I never will scale my business. I am me. I have my network. I do my work the way I do it, because when I optimize a leader, the ripple effect is profound. They go out and they inspire their staff, their culture, and the people that buy from them can actually be highly sustainable and grow the right way.
It's scale though. That is scale, right? Like you're now taking, if your mission is to help people in a way, like you are scaling by working with 3 to 4 leaders who are then affecting the lives of
Well,
thousands of others.
that's
So
I'd say the byproduct is scale. I'm not
yeah,
personally scaling. There's no building a program for what I do. There is no teaching or training other people to be like me. I am me. I have my own gift. Nobody can be an erupter like me. My job is completely different, which is why I was built to come into the world and unfuck leaders. That's my purpose. And I've built my business around that to do just that. So you're right. The scale is a byproduct of my focus and my passion. And those leaders, if they want to build and scale the way they do, go for it. Let's do it from a place of optimization. That's why I say I don't help people, I optimize them. There's a completely different energy behind that.
yeah, and I want to get into that. But
Sure.
one thing I do want to mention too, though, is this is a trap. And if you're listening to this right now, and Wiley, you'll probably laugh at this too, because I'm sure you've heard this. And through doing podcasts all year, I hear this all the time. I've built a 8-figure, 10-figure, whatever it is. I built a 10-figure business. Okay,
Okay.
okay, great. Like that's very good. If you're listening to this, that doesn't mean that person made $10 million, or that
Sure.
doesn't mean that person made $100 million. That
Nope.
means that the revenue of that company was 10 figures. They may have made $10,000 because they may have spent the entirety of all that revenue on
Keeping it afloat.
advertising, on funnels, on whatever it
Right.
is, right?
Right.
So anytime you're trying to copy someone because you hear that they've accomplished something, don't copy them for what they have, copy them for who they are. This is so important. If you value them as a person and you value the life they've built for themselves, not what they've accumulated, the
Right.
life they've built for themselves, the self love, the relationships they've had, their happiness, just the core of who they are, and you admire that, well, then align what they have with how they received that happiness, right?
Right.
That's what you should be copying, not the business plan to get the $1 billion yacht. That's
Sure.
different. That's what they have. And look, there's a lot of ways that you can accumulate that, and you're gonna end up probably in a pretty rough place. But you know what? You're gonna be copying those people, and you're gonna have the same results. You're gonna have the $1 billion yacht, and like you said, you're gonna have the poor relationships essentially, depending on the way you do it, right? And you
Sure.
can do
Sure.
both. But one
Sure.
thing that you talk about this, and I like this too, is I think what the core of what you're saying is you have to be authentic. Like you can't just copy someone. Be authentic. It's more powerful to be you. Like if you're a leader, people are looking up to you. If you lead a company, they're looking up to you. They're not looking up to Tony Robbins. They're not looking up to Steve Jobs. They're not looking up to Bill Gates. They're looking up to Wylie McGraw, right? Like if you're the leader of a company, be you. Be the authentic, powerful you, and do it to the best of your ability, right? So how do you really ensure that these leaders that you work with stay authentic as they explode?
Well, they're all, yeah, that's, I'm glad you said that. You're right. Emulate the person. We need to change the paradigm around what defines success. Now, so success is subjective, of course. However, like you said, why are we not celebrating who someone is and how well they're living their life? Why are we not holding people accountable to be healthy, balanced beings? Why are we allowing their egos and their ego battles with other people like them, and this chaotic toxicity, this toxic masculinity, the back and forth, all that we see in social media and all over the world? Why do we say, well, look what they're doing for humanity, though? Okay, why do we keep sidestepping how dysfunctional they are just because they made some rocket ships, and just because we have these vast pipe dreams about doing some crazy stuff as a species? Like we have someone who's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Oh my goodness, I'm emulating this guy's a real leader. Why do we celebrate that instead of celebrating how they take care of their wife or partner, their animals, their children, themselves? Why don't we look at that as a beacon of success and then let the byproducts speak for themselves because of that person? We don't. And that's the problem in our society. And people are not slowing down enough to say, do I need to be a billionaire? Am I meant to be a multimillionaire? Should I be doing what I'm doing? Do I really understand why I'm doing what I'm doing? Do I even know who I am without all my stress? And the answer, most likely, more often than not, is no. We might think we know who we are, but until you get to a place of self mastery and actualization, authentic you can never be present. You might mentally think it, you might portray it, because anybody has the ability to show their best foot in any environment, but what's behind the curtain matters. And if you cannot marry those two versions together, you'll never be as authentic as you really think you are. And that's why I keep talking about your ability to face your truth, know who you are without those stresses matters. It affects your performance. Performance has everything to do with you, not on what you're able to accomplish.
Yeah. I think in a way though, I think as humans, and maybe not as humans, just something that I think about is just I feel like I can aggregate knowledge from a bunch of different places and put them together and to make
Sure.
like this like success soup, right? So
Sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do feel like I can look at someone that I admire, whether it be like my dad, right? My dad was the best father on the planet. I'll tell you that. Put him up
That's
against
great.
anyone, right?
That's great.
The so I want that, right? Like I want to be the
Yes.
best dad I could be. But I also really admire like Elon Musk and his creativity
Sure.
and his ability to start a rocket company for out of nothing and self-driving cars. But then I also really admire like Warren Buffett's mind for investing, right? So
I love
in
where
a
you're going
way,
with this.
I
Yeah.
do feel like you can aggregate and pull and say, like, I want to copy this. I want to
Sure.
copy this. I want to copy this. I just want to like bring it into this well kind of stirred up soup of Ryan to
There you
have
go.
my own success, right? I
Yes.
mean, is
Yes.
that do you think that's even possible?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up. And I want to just make sure I finish that last thought too before your question is with the leaders that I work with the work that I do, I push them far beyond their limits. They get to that state of optimal performance so that the best version of themselves is sustainable and constantly present in everything that they do. So when they go
Mhm,
off, when we're done together, I'm done with them and they go off and live their best life. I've done my job. Now, to go what you said, when I was a young soldier, when I got in the military, I realized that the guys that were sergeants, et cetera, above me, I saw their lives. I watched how they were, mean to their spouses. I watched how they were
mm,
just angry all the time. However, what I did was like when I become my own leader myself, when I get promoted and become an NCO, I want to make sure that I lead based on who I am. So I started to pay attention to the good qualities of leadership from each leader that was always around me. And I would just cherry pick specific ways in which they approached their job. And then like that
mhm,
soup you said, and I swallowed that soup and I made my own leadership style based on myself. I I allowed my intuition to take hold and go, you know what? Here's where I'm going to show up to be the best me. So when I took over a squad and I became a mortar squad leader in the infantry, and I had my four guys, it was giving them the space to provide their own creativity and insights on our missions or whatever we
mm,
were engaged in, instead of being the kind of leader that says, I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to go do it. And even Jocko talks about that is, I mean, my buddies that are SEALs as well as on the teams, everybody has input because it's all about creating this huge holistic flow together because that's what's called a team. So I approach my leadership as a combat infantry leader from that space of taking things that I really appreciated from different people and I made my own leadership style out of it. And you can do that in your life and business is you can like Elon Musk's creativity. Okay. And you can appreciate Warren Buffett's mindset. You can emulate your father's state of being, who he was as a man, and create your own version of you so that you can go out in the world and innovate from that space. But we don't have people that do that. That's the piece
mm.
that's missing. We want to just be like that person based on what we see. And if you pull the curtain back from a lot of the leaders that I've worked with before I've got my hands on them, you'd be like, whoa, I don't know if I want to follow that guy anymore. That's what he's doing behind the curtains. He's making me feel like he's got it all figured out, telling me how to have the best life ever, but he's suffering with cancer behind the scene. He's not telling anybody about it. His wife left him. He's dealing with, chaos in his family dynamics. His health is deteriorating. Why would I want to be like that guy? Do I want to
Mm,
appreciate his creativity? Sure. But I'm saying value who someone is so that you can know who you really are instead of trying to just be like someone else out there.
yeah, I love that. I love that. What's the difference between helping and optimizing?
Think about those two words first and foremost. Help, optimize. I always say feel and lean into the energy of those words first and foremost. When you
Mm,
help someone, I wrote it in a paper called Why You Need to Get Unfucked. It's on my website. It talks about the 5 key contrasts that we need to understand to take ourselves and our organizations to the next level. And one of them is help versus optimize. When you help someone, you provide them some service, some support that can move them down the road. It provides them some value of structure, some steps, some systems. But when you step into a world of optimizing someone, you're talking about leaving no stone unturned in their life, their relationship dynamics, their health, their mindset, their emotions, their ability to handle stress. Every aspect of someone needs to be optimized holistically to be considered high performance, peak performers. Helping someone is good. It's kind of like those programs you talked about earlier. You can buy an online training program for your physical fitness that helps you. But until you get a trainer who will actually shock you and challenge you one-on-one in real time, you're never going to know what it's like to be optimized. Being optimized doesn't mean making more money and creating more growth for your business. It means every aspect of you is at a sustained high peak place of performing. You are in this, like I call my athletes that I worked with, call it being in the zone. When you are able to be in the zone from all areas of your life simultaneously, that is optimization. But hiring a business coach when you have stress in your life just to focus on more strategy to build your business to make more money, you're not being optimized, you're being helped.
Okay. That is interesting. I like that. And it's a really great example about hiring a business coach when you have stress in your life. Because if the business itself is what's causing stress, man, what a terrible way to approach growth and optimization. Like
Right?
you're harming yourself.
It's a band-aid on the bullet hole. You're putting a band-aid on a bullet hole. You're not
Not
doing anything
even
to
well,
resolve it.
not even that. You're putting poison in it.
Sure. Well,
If
that
that's the
too.
case, right? Because
That too.
if that's the cause of the stress, right? I mean, you may have underlying
Well,
stresses otherwise, right? But it takes someone that like yourself who can take a step back and say, or even like a good friend or a spouse that just says, look, this is not good. Like your hair is falling out. You're blowing up at the kids for no reason. Like we have to figure out why are you stressed before we do anything, before we throw money at any problem.
sure.
Let's get to the bottom of it, right?
Absolutely.
And I think
Absolutely.
it underscores again just the importance of either hiring a coach or building a relationship with someone that cares about you, that is in tune to your being,
Sure.
you know.
Yep. But we don't have that very much in a more an abundant way. We have the people just they chalk it up to like, I don't want to deal with your stuff and just figure yourself out and then come back. And it's like, well, the reason why nobody really transforms is because we have people are too afraid to actually say the hard things to someone. We consider love is supposed to feel and look a certain way. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
love is not the answer. Truth is the answer. And we have a
Mm.
world that says love is going to fix everything. No, no, it doesn't. Love does not fix a single thing. Love is a state of being. It's a source of energy we can connect into. But truth is what actually transforms people. Riding the wave of love. So when you are set point love and care, that can never change, no matter what's around you or what's going on within you. So when you provide people truth, it may sound ugly, it may feel uncomfortable, you may not like what you hear, but if it rattles you from within and it starts to create growth for you, you need to lean into that. You cannot run away from it or
Mm.
try to put up walls and say, I don't like the way you're approaching me. That's not love. Well, I'm not here to give you that. I am love. I'm here to give you truth. If you don't want truth, I'm not your person. But if you really want to transform your life, you have to be willing to face truths that you otherwise have swept under the rug, which then cause those stresses you just talked about. Because the external world that's going on around you has a direct correlation to the internal world that you have not resolved. And until you resolve those inner stresses, you're going to manifest and create dynamics and situations and relationships and businesses that reflect that. And that's why people say, well, my business is stressing me out. Actually, you are the one that's stressed out. You are the one that's unresolved, and you're seeing it reflected in the work you're doing. And until you fix and resolve you, you're never going to be optimal. You're just going to be in a state of seeking more help and trying to figure things out. And you're going to consistently go on the outside, and you're never going to understand that the inside world of who you are actually directly impacts the world that's around you.
Wow, that's powerful. The one thing that stuck out to me is I don't think you can have love without truth either. Because if there's something underlying that's not truthful, is it even love, right?
Well,
Yeah.
if I may, Ryan, when you have someone, I use this analogy really quickly. It's when you have a family member who is a drug addict, okay, saying you need to love me for who I am. It's like, why would I want to love that? That's not the real you, okay? That at all. My love is always going to be there, but my
Yeah.
truth to get you out of that is going to be very ugly. What I care about is you. And if you're not willing to step into that, then I can't be with you. And you can be like, oh, you're my family. You're supposed to stay with me no matter what. No, I'm not. Who said so? Who is the benchmark that says you have to just endure people's dysfunction just because you're what blood, or you might say that I care about you or I love you. I love you enough to walk away from you because that's the truth you need to feel if you want to make a change in your life. I love you enough to shake you, battle you, fight you, because you only really know someone who truly someone is when you fight them. And I'm not talking about just physical altercation. I'm truly about that confrontational battle where people are at their most heightened
Mm,
states, where you get to reel them. That's when you know who somebody really is. And until you get someone outside of you that can challenge you and make you feel that way, you're always going to bring in people that just compensate and give you that space of like, oh, everything's good and I'm doing good. I'm better. Even though you might inside feel like, nah, it's not working out.
yeah, man, that's so powerful. That is so powerful. Wiley, dude, this has been such a great conversation, and
Thank
I
you, brother.
I
I
could talk
appreciate
to
it.
you for hours, and I can't wait. I'm
We
looking
should.
forward to the invite to come talk to you over a
Absolutely.
glass of bourbon and scotch, and we're gonna do
Absolutely.
that.
We
But
will.
I have three final questions that I ask
Sure.
at the end of every single podcast. But before that, if someone listening to this is saying, "Man, Wylie McGraw, I got to reach out to this guy. I need him in my life." How can people find you?
Absolutely. Well, my contact information is on my new website that I put together after being behind the scenes for a very long time. Didn't need that digital space, but you can go to time2erupt.com. We'll forward them to wileymcgraw.com. But it'll take them right to a place where they can read this character index I created to self-assess and say, am I in a position to really optimize myself and step into this type of next level performance? And then they can pick up the phone and call. Simple as that, or shoot me an email if you feel a little bit more comfortable doing it that way. But I want them to know that don't feel you've got to jump through hoops. If you're inspired and you want to know more and you want to dive in and you're just do that 10% off discount conversation, right? Pick up the phone and call. I'm more than happy to have conversations with people who are willing to step into it. So we can go there.
Awesome. And all those links will be in the show notes.
Great.
So, Wiley, final three questions. What is the most impactful book you've ever read?
Ooh, the most impactful book I have ever read. That's a really hard one. I don't how do we truncate that down into I'll tell you what. I read a book called Inner Vegas, Dr. Joseph Gallenberger, and he in Inner Vegas, like Las Vegas, and he
Okay.
talks about very, very amazing read, 278 pages, but it's worth it. And he talks about that alignment you and I discussed and how to manifest and move matter with your mind, your body, your emotions, all in that full alignment together. And they've scientifically proven psychokinesis through laboratory results, where if we are in the right environment and we have the right situations and we are in the right alignment, we can in fact create and manifest what we want. And he discusses that how he utilized Las Vegas craps tables as his laboratory with his
Interesting.
students to focus on rolling the dice and hitting the numbers they wanted to hit over and over again. And they would sit there and they would roll for hours and just hit the same numbers over and over again because everybody was focused together in that right state of being. And that book was really significant. And I really appreciated it. So that's one book that I would say that's at the top of my list.
That is interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Absolutely.
If you could sit down and have a drink with anyone, past or present, who
Ooh.
would it be? What would you drink and why?
Well, I'm drinking single malt scotch. A really good single malt scotch. I think I would sit down with any one of our old philosophers, from Plato to Aristotle to Socrates. I mean, to me, it's like I would love to delve into their minds back in how they were just so much more advanced for their time. And I love and live by a lot of those philosophies myself. So I think I would sit down with them and sip a little single malt.
Nice. If you
Yeah.
could ask Socrates one question, what would it be?
Oof.
That's an on the spot.
That isn't on a one question. I would actually, I would say I don't want to dive into more of the, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing philosophy, because
Mm,
we nowadays, I'd say, look, I come from this place where people, they don't go beyond those little quips. They hear the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing, and they don't realize what that's actually saying is when you can surrender to that, you actually end up learning everything.
yeah,
And
you're
there's so much
open.
to that. I'd really want to ask him a little
Yeah.
bit more about that and delve into that with him. Yeah.
Nice. That would be great. And the last question, the whole Every Breath Counts podcast, it's all about just having gratitude. It's about optimizing your mind, optimizing your body, optimizing your career so that you can ultimately optimize your life. And there's so many ways to do that. But how do you make every breath count in your life?
I think by default, every morning I wake up, I just feel the sense of gratitude that I live the life that I live. I get to do the work that I do. I know what it's like to live from a place of peace and just have running water, good food on the table. I have money that I get to make. I get to experience great connections and great conversations. And I feel like, to me, if I stay in that state of just gratitude for the life that I have, despite what's going on in the world, that to me, every breath that I take, that's what matters.
I love it. Wylie McGraw, this has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege. I'm so grateful for you taking the time out of your day. And I want to take one last minute just to thank you. Thank you for your service to this country. Thank you for your service to the leaders that are managing the majority of people within our country, and the work that you're doing in terms of helping bring self-awareness, helping to uh, uncover blind spots, to eliminate unresolved stress within some of the most impactful leaders in our country, in our business, in the corporate world. It's commendable, and it goes downstream, so everyone will feel it and does feel it. So thank you
You're welcome, brother.
for
Thank you.
what you've dedicated your life to.
Absolutely.
Guys, go out, check out Wylie McGraw, check out the website. The link will be in the show notes. Accelerate your performance and make every breath